Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask a few additional questions, and at some point I think and Senator Blumenthal does, and then hopefully Senator Lee will return for a bit, but then we have to go back so we don't hold up additional votes. I'd start with, I know you, Ms. Lemon, mentioned the bill that we passed, the Merger Filing Fee Modernization Act, which I appreciated Mr. Delrahim when he was in his old position, was advocating within the administration to get this done. And we finally got it done with a little drama, I will say. The bill that Senator Grassley and I had for a long time at the end of last year. We also passed a bill that Senator Lee had about the venues of cases that they stay, supported by nearly every attorney general in the country, from liberal to conservative, that the cases stay in the states where they are supposed to stay. That was a bill that Senator Lee and I did. But if we could go back to the funding that we had then take effect immediately after some debate, and we actually had a floor vote and got nearly, I think, 90 of the senators to vote for that. How do you anticipate that the agencies, they got this support? Why is it helpful with regard to vertical mergers? And what steps do you recommend additional steps that Congress should take to support vertical merger enforcement? So it's kind of like, how can this be helpful with vertical mergers? The additional funding, which, as you know, was done by charging more on the large mergers and less on smaller mergers. How can that funding be helpful? And then what else do you think Congress should be doing?
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, for the question. So the agencies may be able to bring more cases as a result of receiving additional funding. There are many more mergers that need to be examined today than we have had historically, and so I think that is really testing the capacity of our antitrust enforcement agencies. The funding has not been keeping up with the increase in mergers that need to be examined. So making that change in the Merger Filing Fee Modernization Act is hugely helpful for that. I do think as a next step that they actually need even more funding, even more resources. I fear that they will still be resource constrained even after.
And is it true that these, from what I recall, they bring in funding, they bring in money for bringing these cases because of either remedies, payments, filing fees, and the like?
Right. So on mergers, I think that comes from the filing fees, but certainly other cases that the agency, that in particular, I think about the FTC is always returning a lot of money to the Treasury from prosecuting fraud and things like that. So they absolutely are bringing in money as well.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Rose, one thing that we've seen is that vertically integrated online platforms will often use their dominant position in a market, as we've discussed today, to preference their own products or content. That's why we've reintroduced the bipartisan, Senator Grassley and I, America Innovation and Choice Online Act. We thank Senator Blumenthal for being one of the many co-sponsors. Dr. Rose, how could more vigilant review of vertical mergers help to prevent companies from unfairly preferencing their own products and services over those of competitors? And we're talking here, as you know, the bill's been endorsed by the National Federation of Independent Businesses because of the fact that small businesses feel very strongly about this, that they are getting pushed down the platform in preference for things like Amazon Basic products on the Amazon platform. Professor Rose.
So I think there are two parts of your question, and the first I want to really highlight is, again, I keep coming back to, as you've heard also, I think, from others on this panel, the benefit of congressional action. And, if we take something like self-preferencing, I think that's a behavior that is currently extremely difficult for U.S. antitrust enforcers to reach, even if it is reflective of anti-competitive action that would fall under Section 2. It's just extraordinarily difficult to bring an enforcement action and succeed in court. So I think Congress making it clear that that's a violation will help both in deterrence and in...
Which they've done in other countries.
Yeah. Well, in other countries, the equivalent of our Section 2 standard is also a bit easier. You've got this abuse of a dominant position that we don't have here that allows them to enforce it. So I would just say, if we've got a problem, and self-preferencing may arise in many contexts that have nothing to do with vertical acquisitions. It may just arrive organically. That having this kind of congressional action to make clear what types of behavior and conduct they feel violate the law would be very helpful. In terms of vertical mergers, I guess I think, and this is something that we've seen the agencies, I think, begin to consider, that the acknowledgement that the more you're acquiring companies that are related to you either in a vertical chain or with these platforms, it may not even be vertical. They're depending on you for some things, but they're complementary, part of this kind of two-sided market. I think recognizing that there's a potential harm that can arise from increasing your activity off the platform that then is in conflict with providing service to your downstream or small business competitors, Amazon basic competitors. You have an incentive to preference your product over theirs. I think recognizing that potential in mergers could be an important thing for agencies to do. I think it's going to be extremely difficult to successfully bring challenges based on that theory of harm, but I think if Congress demonstrates...
Without additional legal authority.
Yes.
So my problem is and I'm going to turn over to Senator Blumenthal, who has done some incredible work on app stores and the like. It feels like, to me, that we're just static. We're pretending the world is as it was, not quite back to the Standard Oil days with the old cartoons, but, 30, 40 years ago. And we have this whole new market, and we haven't really passed, with the exception of the resources and the venue bill, one piece of competition legislation in the tech area, and we're just pretending like it's not there. And the rest of the world isn't. They're moving around.
Right.
They're looking at it, and so I just think in the end, it's going to be at our great folly for competition and for the economy as a whole, because the power is so immense, with 90% market share for Google of search engines, and then not putting any guardrails in place. Is just going to lead to much more limited choice and all kinds of little companies going under, because they're just not going to be able to compete if that is their gateway.
Or we outsource our enforcement to Europe and the UK.
Well, that is exactly right. We don't have our American brand of enforcement. We are, of course, these companies who are proud of the innovations they brought in, but that doesn't mean you just step back. We were also proud that they built the railroad. That really was a great thing, but we didn't just step back and say, this is just going so well for everybody. We said, okay, we have to put some rules in place. This just isn't happening here. And that's what I'm trying to convince my colleagues of, that, as you say, we are outsourcing how this is regulated to other nations as we speak, if we don't do something ourselves. What a great segue to Senator Blumenthal. Thank you.
Definitely outsourcing enforcement to other countries, to Europe.